Welcome to the Sharpe Club. So happy to have you with me this evening. A little bit past 9 p.m. on the East Coast. Yes, it's Monday, which means you have to listen to my mug talk about some, I think, pretty cool things, but maybe not. We'll figure it out either way. I want to talk today about something that I think is really important, and that is the idea of who should we trust. It is challenging in today's world to know to trust with so much stuff being thrown at us from all over the place. Who should we be looking at? And should we be double checking everything or triple checking? Or is it just easy to just believe the talking head that I trust? Now, if that talking head is me, yes. But other talking heads, we should be concerned about, should we just blindly trust them or not? Or are we our own judge or not? I have a panel to talk about that today. I have people from all over the world today. I know sometimes I don't. I have people like 3 people from New York City, but that's not today. It isn't at all. I actually have someone today from across the pond, someone known as King Bob. Bo from across the pond, an influencer. How are you?
Good morning. I know it's nighttime where you are, but good morning.
Yes, it's like 2 a.m. where you are. So thank you so much for showing up.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. I also have someone who is, I guess, kind of a journalist, if I would say that. Someone who I've met many times. She is rocking and rolling as the Patriot Chicks, part of that group. She isn't the only Patriot. There's a couple of them. She can tell you about that if she wants to some more. The one, the only, Jamie Silvestri. How are you?
Hello. Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me so much.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, I'll touch on the Patriot Chicks quick. I'm one half, and then Vicky Richter is the other half of it. We do docu-series on human trafficking, and we're in the middle of releasing that right now. And she's been doing a lot of boots on the ground work, whereas I'm doing more like the business and media-facing side of stuff.
Ooh.
So
So we should talk about the border then. Who do we trust in the border too? Absolutely. Great point. But
Yeah.
before we go there, let me bring in our fourth person, someone who is a member in Connecticut of the Forward Party, and also an influencer, the man himself, Holden. Is it Culotta? Did I say it right?
Correct. You got it.
Look at
Thank
that.
you so much for having me. I'm on the East Coast as well, so same time. I'm not too far off from you. But yeah, I'm with the Forward Party. I'm excited to get into this.
So I guess the most important piece is we have watched across the world that we've kind of lost trust in our institutions, whether they're government institutions, whether they're universities or schools, whether they're our CDC or our local politician. So many people who begin to kind of lose even our police force in certain areas, sometimes our judicial system. So often we lose trust. What should we be? How do we fix that? Or does it even matter?
It's kind of scary times. America seems to be singing off the same hymn sheet as the UK and Australia and pretty much every Western country. Every single country, we're just being told the same script, whether it's the police force or the media or the government. And it's really, there's something very suspicious to us that they're all so coordinated and orchestrated.
But I feel like whenever someone says no, right, whatever that no is, aren't they almost feel like they're a fool, right? Even when it's like it's in front of your eyes, like your police force will say that I'm not being bad, I'm being good. I'm like, you're beating the guy up. You're not being good. Like, I can see you beating the guy up, right? You're not being good right now, right? I can see that, right? And it's like, no, I'm being good right now. It drives me nuts. Doesn't it drive you nuts?
I think it's quite a shock to us in the UK because we always, like, you could always trust the BBC. It didn't matter what side of the political spectrum you were on. It didn't matter if you were left or right. There was something inherently trustful and truthful and honest and a lot of integrity about the BBC. And that's gone. And now the British are like, well, you've just, now we've started to think about everything we've ever been told.
Yes. And I feel, look, I'm an American, so I think of the BBC, I think of Doctor Who. And I want to trust Doctor Who. I want to believe in Doctor Who. I don't want to think Doctor Who's not right. See that?
Well, that's a perfect example, because they've totally destroyed Doctor Who with all this woke business. You know, Doctor Who is now like, I think she was a woman, and then they've made her a black girl who's gone back in time, a bit like Indiana Jones, and she's killed him before he even ever began to exist now. So just literally wiped out white man.
We're geeking out on Doctor Who. I'm sorry, we are. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Holden wasn't even born when Doctor Who came out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, neither was I, to be fair. It was just a tough paper round.
No, I wanted to jump in. Larry, I think you hit the nail on the head with what, I was thinking about your question of, who should we trust over the past day? And the answer I came to is I think we just need to trust ourselves more, our own instincts. Yeah. Like, you just said, the police force saying, oh, we're doing good, but then your own eyes are telling you they're not. And I think, there's an instinct nowadays to kind of, self-censor, obviously. You're afraid to talk. Yeah. And so I think, just trusting ourselves more, trusting your own instincts, like believing what's in front of your eyes and not what, the media, the police, the government, whatever it is telling you that is, contradictory to what you're seeing.
But I think the Forward Party, right? I think one of the reasons why the Forward Party has gained some steam is because we don't believe in the left-right duopoly system anymore, right? We think that system doesn't work anymore. So that now we're open. If you go back 10 years ago, Forward Party couldn't have gained any traction. That's not where the Americans weren't there. We weren't prepared to hear it. We wouldn't care what Yang said. We wouldn't care what the Forward Party said. We wouldn't care what a third party said. We weren't there. But I think now we are. I think people are hearing it. And even if they don't understand what Forward's doing it right now or not, then we understand and go, oh, something else? Okay, I'll listen, right?
Yeah, and I think, I'm with Forward because I appreciate the different kind of approach they're taking where, it's a lot of people can recognize that this is not about left versus right, the issues we're facing today. Again, like even, in the media, the narratives are all left, right, this good, this person bad. It's very simplistic, very just like good, bad, yes or no. Yep. But a lot of us can recognize that left or right, these things don't change whoever's in office. We have these wildly different personalities in office, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, but we seem to get the same results over and over and over. They say different things. They, say, I'm going to change everything up, but it never does. And so I think a lot of Americans are now looking at the system like, it's the system itself that is not conducive to problem solving, to any kinds of solutions. And it's just kind of protecting itself. It's become this like aristocracy that just defends its own interests rather than, talking with the people, having an open debate or anything like that.
So let me go to you, Jamie. What you're doing, to be with respect, shouldn't be required, right? The media should be doing what you're doing, the same concept, right? The media is just, well, I don't want to do details and look for something. I just want to call the other guy bad, right? So if I'm on MSNBC side, I just call all Republicans evil. If I'm on the Fox side, I just call Democrats evil. And I'm not doing the detailed, what I thought, right, news was supposed to be about, right? Jamie, there shouldn't be a place for you, but clearly there is.
Of course. Well, first of all, everything Holden was touching on, totally appreciate and love all of that. And that's the whole point of like what we're doing out here, is because it's like an understanding of the systems, and people need to have a brief understanding of all the types of systems that we're living under and be able to observe what they're seeing happen there. So when you are watching all these different channels that are talking badly about one another, but you're hearing things like, oh, an anonymous source said, I love reading through articles and being like, okay, let's take out the journalist's opinion and people who weren't real sources. And when you
don't have anything to read.
Right,
exactly.
It's more bullet points.
Right, yes.
So
it's a 5-word article.
Exactly. And that's why people are loving the citizen journalism that's going on, because they're able to people can tap into what their passion is. Mine's figuring out this human trafficking. Why is it happening? Why is it flourishing? And you're right, it is because the mainstream media isn't talking about it. But again, like why the Forward Party started, people are looking for an alternative to the two system. And the more that people, again, are willing to check into even the stuff we were touching on earlier, like police systems. The police system from where I live versus where it is down in Memphis is very different. Yes. Those are two totally different things. So when people are having conversations from different parts of the country or the world, but you don't understand what that local system is like, you can't have that understanding of one another to make any real meaningful change. It just kind of becomes this argument, and it needs to become an understanding of each other.
Absolutely. Look, I want to bring up a quick comment that I've just picked up here. This is Sam. Sam says, 15 years ago, I blindly trusted the BBC and NPR. Definitely not now. So let me ask you, Bo, you brought this up. So how do you find your news, right? I mean, are you still going to the BBC? Are you not anymore? Do you believe some of it, none of it? Like, where are you going?
I stopped watching any. I don't have telly now. I haven't watched anything on the BBC for years. It's really sad. Yeah, I just I look through things like social media, and then I've always got the radio on usually. So I hear, you hear the news every 15 minutes or whatever. But no, I don't have a trusted source of news now. And sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes I hear something, I retweet it, and it turns out it was just a mad person on Twitter. Yes. And there wasn't laser beams over Hawaii or whatever. But and I think that's, people are very desperate to have a trustworthy news source at the moment.
Yes. Yes. It's funny.
Nuance or debate now. You used to, the BBC, I felt, but then I used to be a raging lefty. I used to be one of these social justice warriors myself. So maybe I just didn't see it. But now I look back and I think, for example, I listen to Radio 4.
Yes.
Or I used to a lot. And I was on a car journey recently, and I was listening to 4 Extra, and they play old programs.
Okay. So you get to listen to the old stuff again.
So I was listening to things that I had heard at the time, and as a very left-wing person who's thinking, yes, I'm morally superior and virtuous, actually I was hearing it in the same program with fresh eyes. It was like a documentary, and I just thought, what a load of top. My rose-tinted glasses of the BBC and British media were totally removed, and now everything sounds like a lie.
Well, it's funny you say that, right? Because I feel like a lot of people, it was some pundit said this years ago. He said most people now use the media the way a drunk uses a lamppost, not for light, but for support, right? So, and I thought, what a great metaphor, right? The idea that now I'm watching media, to your point, Bo, so I can feel better, right? Okay, I'm watching these. I believe that these people over here are evil. So I'm going to watch a TV show that's going to tell me that these people over here are evil. Oh, okay, great. Now I feel better about myself. But my question I always ask is, and I feel like we're getting screwed here, because does our life get better? And I feel like it doesn't. So I get to feel better about myself, but my life actually isn't getting any better. I just kind of feel better about being in a worse spot.
I think for me, the final nail in the coffin for British media was and international media was COVID, and this death toll every single day, death toll.
Yes.
Total absolute refusal to discuss any subjects like alternative medicines to the vaccine.
Yes.
Demonizing people. We lost 60,000 care staff because of vaccine mandates.
Yes.
In care homes mainly, but it also affected children's care homes, adults with learning difficulties. Everything from the children, from the
New York State actually still to this day has a healthcare workers shortage because of all the people who quit during the lockdowns. You're totally correct.
Right.
Yes,
And
we
in
still have it in New York
places-
State.
Yeah, and places where I am, for example, I'm in quite a rural part of very southern UK, it's the most southern point, where the G7 was held, and it's the effect it's really had. All those losses of jobs has been absolutely astronomical. And
So many people lost their jobs here. I agree. So let me walk down that road if I could for a second. I mean, you brought up a lot here. I want to touch a couple of these. The first thing I want to bring up is, you know, what I remember CNN, and I couldn't believe it. There was literally a body count on CNN during the lockdowns the entire time you watch it. You know, now it's another 100,000 dead, 25.
Yeah.
And it was a body. Yes. I was like, is this like the Vietnam War? We're watching the dead from the Vietnam War come home?
Yeah.
What is going on? Right? It was crazy.
I tell you what,
I saw my friends
that way,
go ahead.
If they did behave that way during a war, we wouldn't have many wars, would we?
Yes. I wish they would do that during the war, and maybe we'd stop bombing people.
All the innocent children and women, that bodies were strewn all over the place. Both sides, everybody involved.
If you remember, there was a show on HBO, and it was about the hospitals during the invasion of Iraq. And they did a documentary. It was supposed to be a series about the hospitals. And they did one show, and they actually showed them taking off a Marine's leg because they couldn't save it. And it was physically showing they took the leg off and put it in a plastic bag. I never forgot it. I am a Marine. When I watch my Marines die, it always affects me. That guy did not die, but his leg is gone. Right? Literally, they put it in a plastic bag. You see the chunks hang off his leg. They showed it in HBO. That series was canceled the next week. There was actually one show and one show only. They canceled the next because people complained. Because people didn't want to see that. They didn't want to see the truth of war. They wanted to believe it was glorious and awesome. And they didn't want to see that people are losing arms and legs and being affected directly. You're completely correct, Bo. But boy, will they put numbers on COVID deaths like there's no tomorrow. I'm sorry. Yes. Well, we are dominating the conversation. I'm sorry, Holden. Go ahead. You were going to say something. I apologize.
No, I forgot what I was going to say right there, actually. But
I messed you up. I'm sorry about that. I was yapping about my Marines. I apologize.
No, you're good. That was a great story to tell. I think that is a great question. Where, you know, when media starts to go down this path, that's when people start to get conspiratorial and start to question everything. You know, like, what can I believe if, you know, they're talking about this with COVID, you know, they have these running death counts and everything. They're very clearly trying to push this, you know, narrative onto you with COVID. But then how about, you know, the wars we've been in Iraq, in Afghanistan? And I mean, you could talk about Yemen, you know, places we're bombing. Like, there's no conversation about that. And so you can clearly see, you know, in media, there's things that you're not allowed to have debates about. You know, there's things where some things like COVID, where it's like, this is the narrative. And then there's other things that you just don't get to talk about. And people start to question, you know, that's where the trust starts to really break down, right?
There's no integrity.
Yeah, there's no integrity. It's just, it feels like you're being given this narrative. This narrative is being shoved down your throat. You don't know who to trust anymore, which is this whole conversation. And I think, you know, Jamie, what you said earlier was really good about, you know, these articles that put out, you know, anonymous sources and stuff. Like, I think it's really just incumbent upon all of us to dig into this. Like, I had so many debates about COVID with people where they would get furious at me, you know, saying something. And I would say, like, can you explain in your own words what the point you're trying to make? And they, you know, they would say, like, I can send you this New York Times article, I can send you this or that, but they couldn't explain, you know, in their own words. And I think that's the thing is, you know, if you can't explain this yourself, if you don't understand it yourself, why are you so emotional about it? Why are you so convinced by this? And I think that's what we need. You know, we need to, it's incumbent upon each of us to understand these issues. And if you don't have the time, maybe don't have a strong opinion about it, you know?
Yes. Oh my God. Oh, it's brilliant. Well, I want to go to another piece that you brought up, which is now we also decide what we believe, to your point, because of what the talking head said. So to Jamie's point, why are people talking? Why does Jamie have to do her job like she's doing it? Because no one else will talk about it. Because if you're on the right, all that matters is human trafficking. Nothing else matters. And all the Democrats are the only ones responsible for it. They're the evil ones. It's black and white. If you're a Democrat, it's not even happening. It doesn't exist. The border is closed, right? So you're crazy, right? It's black and white, and no one's figuring out, okay, what's real and what's not. What can we do? What can't we? Who's doing the right thing? Who's doing nothing? You can't get that information. The information is, oh, you're Republicans, all Democrats, they do it all, and every person you meet in the streets is trafficked. And if you're left, it's not happening. Am I wrong, Jamie?
No, there's definitely a contrast to it depending on what media sources people are intaking or maybe who their favorite politicians are. But it's also one of those things where you have to look at it by a local level all the way up to the top, and it's all dependent on the area. I know in New York, when I was running in 2020, there was an assemblywoman who was a Democrat who was working day and night to try to pass legislation that was anti-human trafficking, and she couldn't even get traction in her own party. No. They didn't want to take it as a serious issue. So correct. It's a matter of, again, knowing your local area and who's in charge of this legislation. And, you know, a big part of the problem that I think is when it comes to understanding legislation and topics like this, you have to basically be willing to read through like 350 pages. And who has the time to be reading through a 350-page bill to figure out why we're funding like ice cream shops in upstate when really it was supposed to be funding anti-human trafficking, whatever.
Right. All the time. Yes.
That's part of the issue. But again, it's if people know how to do research, if you know how to pull up a bill that's been passed in your area and hit control find for what exactly you're looking for, control F, you'll be able to find much easier and quicker without wasting your time exactly the pieces of information you need. But the big issue is that a lot of people don't even realize the questions that we need to be asking. And the questions are so simple that like when you do it, you're like, how am I here doing this? Who, what, when, where, why, and how? Answer those questions. And I'm pretty sure most people can do that on their own when they're reading through an article or watching a video or seeing a docuseries or watching a TV show, whatever it is. You should be able to answer those questions by the time you're done taking in whatever source you're taking in. If there's missing pieces, you don't have a full story.
What I would say is, for myself, what I generally do is I used to tease my daughters, right? My daughters are younger and they're all like, Dad, I get my news from TikTok. I'm like, no, not TikTok. But that's what they say. I get it, and then they look at it and they look for stuff. And I get that concept because I find myself now getting after running for office, I have a lot of people in my world who will often send me things. Jamie, you probably have a similar world, right? People will just send you stuff, right? Like, have you seen this, Jamie? Have you seen that? I get a lot of that. I get it daily, right? People are sending me stuff, right? Actually, I have some people who work with me who kind of will look for this, look for that. And when something comes in that I think is interesting, that's when I have to go down a rabbit hole. And I have to go down a rabbit hole and spend an hour or two doing what you're saying to me, finding people that I trust, looking for different people. And what I often find myself doing is looking for specific people for specific issues, right? Like, I'm not going to go to someone who is like an international expert and ask about how the MTA and how the subway system's running, right? I'm not going to ask about that. I'm going to ask someone who's all about transportation and go down that road, right? And see, but how many people have that? That's not easy to find. And I think people, this is what I think, a lot of them are just checking out because it becomes too much. And they'd rather just watch some cat video and not pay attention to what's going on. And then just, I'm a Democrat, I vote D. I'm a Republican, I vote R. And whatever, I got cat videos to watch. I can't go down this road. I don't know. Bo, am I wrong? Are people checking? I don't know.
Turn the people into the NPCs.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. 100%. So I got Holden.
I tell you what, one thing that really struck me is my 16-year-old. She got massively, about 10 years ago, she got massively into Japanese. And
Bo, can you move closer to your microphone? Or can you put your microphone closer to you?
Can you not hear me?
Yeah, you just went down a little bit.
Yeah, she got really
there you go. You're good.
Is that right? She got really into Japanese anime.
They all are.
My sister as well.
But like,
Yes,
I
they all
remember,
are.
and she got my youngest one into it, who was only about 5 at the time. And so what was on British TV for kids, like CBeebies and, you know, the Teletubbies and that, it was so like, you know, and squeaky and stuff. And then I sat down and I watched this film with she was 5, called Grave of the Fireflies. And it
Grave
was,
of the Fireflies. Okay.
it's free on YouTube actually, but it was about the Second World War from the perspective of the Japanese. And it was very complicated, and it was about a little boy and trying to rescue and keep his little sister safe. And I was crying my eyes out. It's a beautiful film. And she was explaining it to me, and she was 5 at the time, and I thought, they're so much more capable than British or American. Like, when I was a kid, Sesame Street used to be quite advanced, but now it's really babyish.
Yes.
And I just feel like our children are being deliberately targeted to watch rubbish and not expand their minds and not be challenged. Or, you know, most of BBC now is about Pride Week and everything. And
right.
But I mean, even in my lifetime, we had fantastic kids programs, really deep, complex subject lines and stories. We had a program called Grange Hill, and that was in the 80s, and they would deal with, you know, sexual abuse in the home, or being gay, or one of the kids died of a drug overdose in the back of a car, and that was in the 80s. Why none of that is dealt with now, even all the way up to age 16. It's all still about fluffy nonsense, treating them like babies.
Well,
and
you brought up something that I remember, right, when I was growing up in the 70s and the 80s. When I was growing up, I'm giving away my age too. So I think I have a couple years on you, Bo. So I was growing up in the 70s and the 80s, and I remember, you know, how even in mainstream TV, people don't know this, but there was a TV show called Soap, SOAP, in the 70s in America. So it was on WABC Channel 7. We only had 3 channels back then. And there was actually a gay main character. It was played by a straight, it was played by straight actor Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal played the character. He was straight, but it was a gay main character, and nobody cared. Like, it was.
Has he apologized for that yet?
He should, because he wasn't gay. But I mean, I guess he could become gay now, and then he'd be fine. Yeah. But anyway, no.
Or a woman. Whatever.
Or woman, either, whatever. All good. But the point is, that was already there, right? That was already happening, right? That was already happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And I remember those battles already. Nobody cares.
And do you remember I was just watching this. I was watching this movie about my daughter's 19, and we were watching classic movies, right? And one of the classic movies we watched was it 1979? I think it was a 1980 movie, The Road Warrior, with Mel Gibson.
Right.
And
great movie.
Great movie, right? And remember the bad guy? The bad guy with the mohawk? He's gay. He has a gay lover. And nobody cared. Like, I watched it. Nobody cared. He was gay and a gay lover. Remember? Because for those of you who saw the movie, the kid who throws his boomerang kills the guy's gay lover, and he now wants to kill everybody because he killed his boyfriend. And he's mad, right? He's the bad guy. He wants to kill a guy. So yeah, it was the big deal. We were doing that in the 70s and 80s. And all of a sudden now it feels like it's bigger.
Well, I think Walk on the Wild Side and Lola by the Kinks was like 1968. No, absolutely. 68 that was. Nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
They've made it matter. But it's more the dumbing down that frustrates me.
Yes. Hold on. I got a couple people who remember that show. Vote Vic USA says Soap is fantastic. I grew up in the 80s, remember it on Nick at Night. Yes, thank you. Absolutely. No sound bites allowed. That is actually Michael Voss. He says Soap dealt with mental illness. That's correct, because one of the guys thought he was going crazy. That's true. Race relations, absolute age romances, teacher-student dating, and way more. None of it pandering. It was a family show that it was kind of like a parody of soap operas. That's why it was called Soap, for daytime soap operas. That's why it was called that. But it actually dealt with a lot of real issues. Absolutely. I don't know. So I feel like now you couldn't do that without it being a big deal. Like now it's a big deal now when it was just the thing we were moving towards.
I think it's like, it's dangerous, you know? I mean, if you're not exposing kids to these kinds of things, like we have over 100,000 people a year dying of fentanyl now. We have, I mean, how many kids are on prescription drugs? Like they should probably be aware of those the side effects of those prescription drugs. Their parents should be, but a doctor recommends it. It's fine. We're not thinking about things very deeply, you know, we're just kind of, and I think, you know, that gets back to what we're talking about now about who you should trust, right? Because I think now that's starting to pull back. Like we kind of gave a lot into just trusting authority, you know, like doctors prescribed it, whatever, you know, police say it's fine. There's no human trafficking. Like it's fake, I heard. So, you know, they read it on the media, but
my talking head said Jamie's a liar, so she's a liar. Done.
Exactly. You know,
there we go. Yes.
So I think, you know, we're seeing a pullback of that now where people are starting to realize like, I should maybe be questioning these things. Maybe, you know, I shouldn't be sending my kid off to college without, you know, any sense of like drugs, alcohol, like, you know, these basic things that you're going to be exposed to. I think there's a reflex of protection, you know, just kind of like keeping your kids protected away from these things about the world, that it's dangerous if you do that, right? Because then they're going to dive into these things without understanding, you know, how to balance them, how to, you know, try drugs in moderation, for example, and not fentanyl. But I think, you know, you're seeing people start to question that now. You're seeing people start to say, like, I don't think
you're also finding the opposite too, right? You're finding people who are also, this is one of the splits, I think, in America. You're finding people who are almost blindly trusting them. And then people who are like not trusting at all, right? Like, so no matter what, it's wrong, right? So like if your doctor says, eat vegetables, I'm not going to eat any, right? Because the doctor said I'm doing this. I'm doing the opposite of what the doctor said, right? No matter what, right? So you find people kind of doing the opposite. I know people who, and being a libertarian, obviously I want, you know, at government out of schooling as much as possible. Clearly I want that, right? So when I go to events, people often say things like, well, Larry, you know, we talk about, you know, school choice. Everybody wants school choice. And I say, I live in New York City. I want school choice, but a lot of people in the city don't. A lot of people don't. And the guy says, no, Larry, if you ask somebody who's going to educate your kid better, you or the government? I know a lot of people who would say government, who would literally say, government, of course, government. Who else? So I think we are having that split too, Holden, where some people are just going, whatever the government says, whatever the authority figures say, that's the science, and therefore that is true. I mean, am I wrong here?
I think it's true on social media too. You know, you see, we talked about like TikTok earlier, but you know, TikTok is more popular than ever. And so our attention spans are shorter than ever. But at the same time, podcasts are more popular than ever too. So there is like this dichotomy, right? Where like a lot of people are just kind of, you know, watching TikTok, getting their news from there and not looking into things. But then there's also people that want to hear a 3-hour debate, you know, and that's also more popular than ever.
Yeah, it's a good point. The question though is, do they want to hear an actual 3-hour debate? I feel like people want one of two things. They either want validation, like 3 people who agree exactly the same way and just basically say, so Holden, tell me how I'm right. Okay, great, Bo. Now tell me how Holden's right. Okay, great. Why don't both of you tell me how right I am? Right? That's one chunk. And the other chunk I feel is an actual discussion. I think that's what, and I think the person who pioneered that actually was Joe Rogan. People I know don't like Joe Rogan or like Joe Rogan, but I really think he pioneered the 2-hour discussion. Prior to that, it was rare. Am I off? Jamie, you do a podcast. I mean, what are you doing?
Well, we're doing the docu-series, not a podcast, but I do agree with that. And the thing that I think keeps Joe Rogan fresh too is that he's willing to look at all topics. He's not gatekeeping particular topics. He's literally looking at what people are actually talking about, whatever's possibly trending. Why is he looking at that? Because that's what people are talking about. And that's a thing where I think that like legacy media is definitely missing out. And that's a part of the reason why the facade's cracking for them a little bit, is because with social media bringing that about, all these podcasts are picking it up now. And you have shows like Joe Rogan or maybe Last Podcast on the Left where they're talking about cryptids and all these interesting topics of people seeing a chupacabra or some lights in the sky or whatever. But people are just sharing their human experience and then, you know, in some cases being shamed for it. But again, back to the very earlier topic of systems. Like when you're listening to these shows, you get to hear about all the local, oh, we called the police when we saw the hairy man in the backyard and the police said that that exists. And then you learn something about that part of the country or that part of the world. And that's an element that's missing from TV media, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people are tuning back into listening a little bit more as well.
Well, you're right, because if you look at some of the more popular podcasts, they get far more viewership or listenership than mainstream media now, right? So for you and me, Jamie, when we're in for office, now it was good because those people don't always vote, right? However, there are more bodies out there who are watching, that's for sure. I think and okay, so let me walk down that road. Does the number of bodies that are watching, does that validate the person?
I'm not sure if it, I mean, I know for some people it probably does, but I just, personally, when I do it, I like having the opportunity to talk and just share my opinions because I develop my opinions on these topics based on what I've heard people saying boots on the ground. Like my opinion is coming from taking in all these stories and understanding the perspective that people have and why they think that way. And that's another big part of the question. It's, well, why do you love watching CNN or MSNBC so much? What about it attracts you to it? I try to find those things out about people when I'm talking to them. So if someone's like, oh, did you see that there was a China balloon? But no, really, it was a UFO. What's going on here? Like, I want to hear all about it. Tell me what you're thinking. Give me the share it.
People aren't free to talk. That's another thing. Not only they're bombarded with a message, people are now no longer free to have an opinion. And
well, move closer to the microphone again.
Sorry.
There we go.
Started to shut down a lot and not speak.
Yes.
Like in Orwell's 1984 with the Newspeak dictionary, words are changing, things you're not allowed to say. We're now on the 13th edition where, you know, you just can't have an alternative opinion anymore. I just, like when I see my friends, I really dodge a lot of subjects that I know that
you have to.
Yeah, because I don't want to lose their friendship, but I totally disagree. I know I would totally disagree with them. So then sometimes you find yourself avoiding them altogether in case it comes up. And that's really sad. We used to be able to just talk to you. But also, politics didn't infiltrate every single conversation.
Right.
When we were younger. You could just like music and not be political.
Yes. Yes. You know, the point you bring up is I get that here too, though.
In everything.
I get that here too, though, right? And so do podcasters, right? If I have somebody on that people don't like, they assume that I'm platforming and I agree with the person, and now all of a sudden I'm a bad guy. Like I've had hardcore people on the right, I've had communists on my show, and everything in between. It doesn't mean that now I'm a communist, right? That doesn't mean that at all, right? But I think that people get upset sometimes. To your point, they're like, "No, Larry, you can't talk to these people." I'm like, why? Aren't they all just human beings? Shouldn't we be having a conversation? And without having a conversation, how do we fix it? Go ahead, Bo, sorry.
Talking is the best. And like Jamie said, you know, like listening to these people, Holden said, you know, like, well, why do you think that? Well, you know, like if we've been able to do that during COVID, for example, you know, why do you think eating a Scotch egg in a pub will stop you getting COVID?
Yes.
But you can't buy, you have to. So why do you think following arrows on the floor in a supermarket will stop you catching the most deadly airborne?
Absolutely. Yes.
And, you know, like,
and yes, I agree.
You know, and they go
100%.
But now they just go scream and shout.
Yes. So let me do a little bit of admin if I could. Guys, if you're listening or watching to this show and you like what you're hearing, then do me a favor, click the like button. I have to get past Mr. Algorithm. I have to get past the algorithms. So please help me out. Click that like button. It does matter tremendously. Please do that. If you are watching on Twitter, please retweet this right now. It does matter. Every retweet does count. So retweet it if you can. If you happen to be watching on Larry Sharpe YouTube, you can always super chat me if you want to get your chat to the front if you want to. But more important, there were 3 people here who are giving us some time. In fact, Bo's giving us time at 2 o'clock in the morning. So why don't we be good to them? They're giving us some love. Give them some love. Follow them on Twitter. You can follow Bo at King Bob IIV. You can follow Holden at holdenfwdusa, that is, USA. And you can follow Jamie at Silvestri AF, all on Twitter, or head over to either Facebook or to YouTube, and you can see all their data there to follow them and see what they're doing either way. So I want to go back to the point I just brought up, though, which is the idea of the 3-hour talk or whatever the case may be, because Nick brings up a point. He says echo chambers or deep, thoughtful think tanks. And I feel like that's kind of true. I think we kind of want one or the other. And I would bet people go back and forth, right? You probably get a deep, thoughtful think tank, start doubting your views. So you go back to your echo chamber to reinforce your views again, right? Okay, yeah. No, I knew I was right. I mean, I don't know. Is that what you guys do? Do you follow that or no?
No, I mean, personally, I always want to hear a debate. Like if I am hearing something, where it's making me angry or, I really disagree with it, like I want to hear that. Because if I strongly disagree with you, I want to know where you're coming from. Like I don't want to just say, I completely disagree with you, so you must be a bad person. No, like, I think everybody's good. Everybody's
not good.
Trying to do the right thing, right?
Everybody's nope. Most are. I think
most people, let's say average people. Let's say average people.
There we go.
Average people. Okay. Yes. Average people are coming from a good place. They're average people, they're trying to do the right thing. And so I want to ask, like, how did you, if I think what you're saying is crazy, I want to know how you got there. Because, if you're acting in good faith, I want to know how you got to that conclusion. So, and to your point earlier, about it does the listener count, kind of validate the conversation. Yeah. I think it validates the conversation, not necessarily the person, right? Okay. But it's like people want to hear that conversation. I'm sure there's a lot of people who listen to Joe Rogan who don't like him, but there isn't, there aren't other options. There's a lot of different podcasts now that you can listen to. But I think people are searching, some people at least. There are a lot of people.
Right here, it's the best one.
I've heard it's pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah. That's good.
Yeah, but me, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Jamie, I mean, are you looking more for specifics? Are you looking more for debate? Do you even care about debate?
I like hearing the debate process. I really love when you listen to one and people are like a hair away from agreeing with each other, but they just don't want to get in on that one little angle. And it's like, if you're like 90% of the way there, why is that 10% really going to hold you back? But I like what Holden said about it validating the conversation, because when that many people are tuning into the topic, then it clearly shows, like, not to just be human trafficking the whole time, but look at Sound of Freedom. That movie did phenomenal.
Yes.
Now they're teasing a second one. So it's obviously the people are interested in seeing that now. And
absolutely.
Again, you can't find it on your regular screens in most places. Now it's on a movie theater screen and it's totally blowing up.
Right.
So if I think, what was that? I'm sorry.
I got to go to your point you just said it, because I haven't seen the movie yet, but I've heard so many people attack the movie and they haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And the attack was, my talking head said it's bad, right? That was the attack. My talking head said it's bad because in the case of Sound of Freedom, obviously if you're on the left, you go, oh, well, it's not happening. So obviously you just made it all up and it's all lies. And so I think to myself, if you don't care about that topic, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you don't, I understand. Go watch something else. Why are you attacking the movie? This topic you don't care about it. Okay, go worry about something else that matters to you. But if you care about the topic, why wouldn't you go watch the movie before you talk about it? Right? Assuming you care about the topic. Shouldn't you go watch the movie first and then say if it sucks or it doesn't suck or whatever the case may be? I think that goes into that.
I think sometimes if people sit there and say, oh, that's not a real thing happening, when there's clear and present evidence of it happening,
Yes.
It's kind of like, well, why don't you want to see the truth? What about it? And, you know, back to the show you were talking about on HBO getting canceled, right?
Right.
The truth is ugly. It's not always going to be pretty. And
that's
people,
why they don't want to admit it. They don't want to have to deal with it.
Right. And it's traumatizing.
If they realise it's true, then they might have to go, my God, I need to react to this. And I can't be bothered because I'm busy watching TikTok.
And I mean, I can understand that. Like, you know, my mom is the same way. She's like, I try and talk to her about some of these things, and she's just like, I don't want to know about this. Like this, you know, I want to live my life. This makes me depressed to think about it. Like, I just, why would I think about these kinds of things when I can, you know, go, you know, do what makes me happy and live my life happily. And, you know, there are a lot of people like that, and I can't necessarily fault them, you know, because I think there's a lot of people that will come out and have strong opinions, and that I will fault. You know, if you're not paying attention, not reading these things, but also have really strong opinions of like, you know, well, the talking head said, you know, it's a right-wing conspiracy, then, you know, that can't be really taken seriously. But there are a lot of people who just want to tune out because they, you know, it hurts their lives. They're like, you know, this decreases my quality of life if I'm paying attention to these things. So why should I?
Well, like
but in that case, I agree. You should just walk away, shouldn't you? You should just like, okay, I'm going to check out. I'm not going to have a decision on whether, you know, the movie's good or not. I'm going to go watch TikTok and whatever. Jamie, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Well, no, you're good. I was just saying to Holden what he was saying at the end there. It's exactly what you were saying before, though. If you're not going to look at it, don't have a strong opinion about it then. It's like literally that simple. I'm not going to like argue with someone over how to cook something in the kitchen or whatever, maybe like a paint color. Like, I'm not going to argue with someone over that. I don't know enough. But when it comes to, again, like trafficking or maybe certain government issues, that I could definitely have a comfortable conversation about because the research has been done and talking to people from both sides of the opinion has been done and talking to people who work the job has been done. So if people are that disgusted by something that's the truth, maybe what they need to do is find a comfortable conduit that's not the news to take it in.
Here we go. Oh, I like that. Let me grab a couple. I have a bunch of comments. I'm going to grab some of them. Nick remembers the counter. He says, the death counter on CNN and MSNBC was awful to see day after day. And what bothered me about that, really bothered me about that, was that the goal was only one thing. The goal was to keep you watching. That was the goal. Yes, it wasn't because they actually cared about the people dying. No. They didn't. Right? It was because if they actually were like, oh my God, it's terrible. Let me tell you some stories or something, or let me give you some real advice on what to do, or let's have a bunch of actual scientists going to debate this issue back and forth. It was none of that. It was government says this, so do what government says. And by the way, be afraid. And let me show you why you should be afraid. So in case you think the government could be wrong, let me make you extra afraid so you'll just listen to what the government says. That's how I saw it.
Wasn't it interesting internationally how many people that nearly died of COVID went to acting school and worked as crisis actors? That was such a coincidence.
Is that true?
Yeah, you had it in the US as well. Every time they had someone like gasping for breath filmed by ITV or whatever, 2 seconds into a Google search, you'd see that they went to RADA. They were registered with different agents.
So you're saying that
crisis actor.
So you're saying these people were all trying to make it big by doing this? Is that what it is?
Just doing a job, like they would do an advert for condoms or something. They were just doing a job.
I like that. I do a condom advertisement one day, and then here I am. Go get the vaccine because I'm dying. Okay, I'll buy it. Okay,
it was just so fake. It was so fake, so much.
The scientific libertarian says the rich and connected brazenly violated their own COVID protocols, and then they had the biggest welfare transfer in U.S. history.
Yeah,
he is 100% correct. And what bothers me more than anything about this is if we ever want to turn this around, and I don't think they ever want to, but let's say they decide, let's turn this around. We've screwed up. We're sorry. Let's screw this up. Let's unscrew this up. Let's fix this thing. The only way you could do it would be decades of of transparency, decades of just showing everything, right? Making your books wide open. Everyone could see everything, and then taking all of the terrible responses you'd get to everything that was done, taking all of that for like a decade or two. Then maybe we would start trusting. Now, what I just asked is a fantasy. That is never going to happen. However, I think that would be the answer. If they actually decide to do so, I think that could, in theory, over time, work. I don't know if that's going to ever happen.
No, I think you're right. And I think that gets to, a good point that, what we have to do to turn this around, for example, to turn things around is simple, but not easy, right?
Yes,
like it's simple,
agreed.
Transparency, accountability, basic things, but those are not easy to execute. It's way easier said than done. And I think it's very easy to, just kind of fall into thinking things are overcomplicated. We need this, federal bureaucracy to work. There's all these moving pieces, and it's not that simple, but it is that simple. It's just transparency, and it's not easy to do that, but it's simple, I think.
Yes,
but
I think
go ahead, Bo. They've taught us. They've inadvertently taught us their game. Human beings, all mammals, because we can be prey and predators, are very good at picking up on patterns. And what I think has become very clear over the last few years is what they leave out is often the most important thing. So to go back to COVID, for example, if somebody died, if they had been unvaccinated, we were told immediately, that was the first line, anti-vaxxer dies of COVID. So then when people started dying and anti-vaxxer wasn't in the sentence, immediately but people were like, well, they must be vaccinated then. So why are then all these people dying if they've had, because of what they left out? And we see, like, even, I don't know what the American media is like at the moment, but we have quite a crisis ourselves with illegal migrants. And for example,
we have a little problem with illegal migrants.
Yeah,
small one, tiny, so small.
And like, for example, everybody's LGBT man run the whole world at the moment, until one of them gets murdered, and then there's no description of the attacker. And then as soon as that person is caught, and they might have a conflicting cultural background, the whole story goes quiet. For example, in Ireland, in Sligo, there was 2 gay men that were hunted down on a dating app, tortured, murdered. There was a national manhunt. The news was all over the world about this horrific crime. As soon as they found out that he was an illegal immigrant, and he did it because he was a fanatic Muslim. I'm not saying that all Muslims think that way, but because he was on the fanatical side, everybody went, shh. Oh yeah, someone got caught. But even this weekend, 2 gay men were stabbed in Clapham outside a gay bar, and the police description in the newspapers was they were looking for a man. That was it. No description. We don't know how tall he is, what age he is, what he looks like. And so they've started to teach us the story lays in what they're not reporting. And people like Jamie are filling that gap because she's brave and she's digs and she's not scared to say, these are the facts and this is what I'm going to report. Regardless of what you call me, I'm just going to say what happened.
Well, let me try to give a little bit of what's the word I'm gonna look for? A little bit of, I guess, pushback, not pushback. A little bit. I'm gonna be nicer to the people who are doing this. The problem they have is we have also taught, because my idea of transparency, that's only mine, no one else thought of it, only me. My idea, I own it now, of transparency is the answer, that if we ever become transparent, actually say the things you say, Bo, we get canceled.
Yeah.
So we can't do it, right? So even if I'm a reporter and I want to say the things, I can't say the things, because then I get canceled. So if I want to be transparent, I get punished horribly for being transparent, whatever the case may be. I can't make a mistake. I can't screw up, and I'm guilty unless I'm proven innocent, right? An example I'll give now in America is, which is, I think, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a good example, and that is with Lizzo, the singer, being canceled for allegedly, I don't know if it's true or not, maybe it is, maybe she's done it, I don't know if she has, but allegedly being mean to her heavy her heavy dancers.
Say fat.
Supposedly. I'm sorry?
Do it. Say fat.
I don't know if they're fat. I haven't seen them, so I don't know. I know they're heavy. That I know. I don't know if they're fat, but maybe they're fat. Maybe. I know they're heavy. I haven't seen them. So her heavy dancers, right? So the problem is, maybe she did. I don't know the details. I didn't really deep dive here. Perhaps she's mean and nasty. People are. Maybe she's one of them. I don't know that. But my point is, immediately she's canceled. She can't go to the Super Bowl anymore now. She lost a Super Bowl contract. Like, she's not even like convicted or anything. We don't even know. I mean, maybe these are just 3 disgruntled people who are mad at her or something. I mean, again, I don't know details, but that's the point. I don't know the details, and she's already lost her Super Bowl gig. Wow. So she's canceled, and it's Lizzo. Lizzo was one of the people who was so good towards people who are heavy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, Bo, go ahead.
I was just going to say the trouble is, I think, with media is they pay so well. The more people have, the more they risk losing. And this is why you're seeing a resurgence of people like Jamie, who, you know, she's not a millionaire from being a journalist with a house in Beverly Hills.
You don't know. She could be hiding it. Maybe she is.
No.
Show us the money.
Yeah, show us the money, Jamie. Show us the money. Come on now.
Someone please show me the money.
But citizen journalists can afford to be a lot braver in many respects because they haven't got a Super Bowl contract to lose.
Okay, go ahead, Holden. I'm sorry.
We've seen these people rise up always from the bottom.
Yeah,
taking over. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think it's a positive development for sure. I think with the idea of, you know, canceling and this whole culture of, you know, deplatforming people, like getting mad at someone for platforming, I think, you know, to an extent that idea seems to become popular when there isn't justice in a society. Like, you know, 60% of Americans couldn't put their hands on $1,000 in an emergency. Like, we have a messed up system where most people see that this is unjust. And it's messed up. It's not working for them. It's destroying their lives. You know, they don't know if their kids are going to succeed. Probably not, you know, as things look right now. And so I think, you know, people turn to something like canceling, deplatforming, these like easier things that's like, well, I can control that. You know, I can't control the federal government. I can't alter the federal government. You know, most of our elections are not even competitive. There's like a handful that are. So people look to other things like, what can I change? And you know, I think it's just a sad reflection of where we are as a society, but people don't want to take the hard route, you know, like the route of reforming this system is hard. That's going to take time and effort and, you know, real heroes. Right. And not a lot of people want
it's going to take losses too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we got to lose and get back up. It's tough. And let me go to a part though, Bo, there's a separate part to this though, right? Some people are uncancelable. And why I say that is, you know, how do I explain this? The system of cancellation in many ways supports the elite.
Yeah.
Because the elite are uncancelable. The person who's starting from scratch has nothing to lose, so they can keep going. It's the person in the middle who is devastated. Right, that person, say I've just started my career, I'm maybe 5 or 10 years into a career, I work someplace, I'm paying my bills, maybe my kids are in school or whatever. I can't afford to I can't lose my career. I can't be canceled. I'm done. That's the end of my life. I can't be canceled. I'm Dave Chappelle. I say what I want. What are you going to do? You can't cancel me. I'm Dave Chappelle. I say what I want, when I want. I'm uncancelable, right? So I do think this system destroys the middle.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a critical piece, because to your point, Holden, the average person is going to struggle if they have, was a $400, $500 emergency, whatever the number is, I forgot what it is, the average American. If you have a $400, $500 emergency, the average American has trouble getting that money to, deal with that without going into debt, right? That's a problem. The middle class is being hollowed out, destroyed, to where you either have a whole lot of money, more than you can do anything with, or you're struggling. Like you're one canceled job away from losing your home, or being thrown out of your house, or not having a car, or whatever. Am I wrong? Is that the same in the UK, Bo, or is it just here?
Yes, it's worse actually, because we're so small. Our communities are so small. So, if you're guilty of wrong speak, for example, where I am in Cornwall, about 14% of people work for the NHS.
Wow.
So that's a large percentage.
Yes.
Of our entire population. And that's why people were too frightened to speak up about the vaccine mandates.
Of course.
Because they didn't want to never work again. They were just frightened. They weren't conspiracy theorists or anything. A lot of them worked 12-hour night shifts. They weren't the sort to be sitting around watching David Icke videos or anything like that. They just inherently or instinctively were like, hang on a minute, this vaccine's only just come out. It's a bit suspicious. I'm not really prepared to take the risk. And then it was like, I always think of that film with Donald Sutherland, with the body snatchers.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yes, that's right.
Like
yes.
That's
right.
What
yes.
It's like. And so, it's really tough in smaller communities. Not so much in the big cities, but even then, everything's so nepotistic, the legal system, if you work in law, or if you work in the health services or recruitment or whatever industry you're in, once your name is mud, and the first thing an employer does now is look you up on Facebook or look you up on Twitter.
Yes,
you
absolutely.
Can't run away. If you've written something a bit fruity 5 years ago, that follows you around forever now.
Yeah, but I'm going to go to a point where when I was running for office, I had a lot of people in my team who were felons. And I don't care about, I'm libertarian, you can be a felon, I don't care. You probably wasn't a crime anyway, I don't care. Anyway, but my point is that a lot of people who were felons, I didn't care. My mother was a felon. I mean, I have a lot of felons around me, I don't care, right? I don't care. If you're out of prison and you're not doing bad now, I don't care. All good. I'm a big proponent of second chances. And so I was telling someone about this in a training I was doing for people. And they said, well, Larry, didn't you want to do a full background check on everybody who worked for you? I said, no. You know what? I said, no. But what if they did bad stuff? Then they did bad stuff. No, I didn't care. Now, I'm the oddball. But my point is, if more people are like that, we'll be better off. But here's the problem. At least in America, I don't know if it's true in the UK, but in America, if you hire somebody with a bad background, and they then do something to a customer, you are liable. Yeah. They say, why didn't you do a background check? And I'm like, well, because I want a second chance. And it's a funny story. I used to sell background checks about 30 years ago. Back in the day, that was actually selling. And I tried to sell to franchise McDonald's. And the franchise McDonald's said, no, I don't want to do it. I said, it's cheap. You can do a full background check, like $30. It's done, the detail. I don't want to. I said, why? Don't you want to know if someone committed a crime? He's like, no. If I do a background check, then I can't hire them. I need people in my store. He's like, because if they do something bad and I knew about it, well, then I'm in trouble. So I don't want to know. And I was like, wow. But to me, that was actually brilliant. That was the best way people could get second chances, by allowing their slate to be clean. And to your point, Bo, we never allow the slate to be clean, ever. But we go back 10, 20 years, and we go back and go, no. You did this thing 20 years ago. You don't get a clean slate. You are now scarred forever.
Yeah, and something that was acceptable, I did a thread on this the other day about how it used to be perfectly acceptable, even in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, to do blackface. But it's not now. But now it's acceptable to do womanface. And I was trying to say, we're offended. And you need to stop doing it. And in 10 years' time, you're going to be embarrassed because you're going to be wrong.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I tell this story often. when I was years ago, I'm obviously a big geek. I like Doctor Who, and I also like Star Trek. So obviously I'm a big sci-fi geek, right? But for those of you who don't know Star Trek, the third Star Trek series was a series called DS9, at Deep Space Nine, and in that series, the captain was black and he had a bald head, right? So geeks, when I would go to my conventions and such, yes, I went to conventions. I know and so sometimes white kids who wanted to be him would put on a skull cap and paint their faces brown to be that guy. The character's name was Captain Sisko, right? And they'd put it on, and it was totally okay. Like nobody got mad. Everybody was fine. They're cosplaying. They liked the captain. And he was a white kid. They just liked it.
It was a compliment.
Yes, they thought he was awesome. You do that now, you are finished. I hope no one's got pictures of those kids back in the 90s when they were doing that. That was the 90s. When they were doing it in the 90s, I hope they have the pictures because those guys can't get elected anymore. They're going to say, see, you did blackface back in the 90s. Oh, my God. I think you're totally right. And my point is, I know I exaggerate. And I exaggerate because, as I said, my mother was a felon and people had to give her a second chance.
Yeah.
Right. And people gave her a second chance with small business owners who did. They were diners where she worked as a waitress to get herself back in action. So I'm all about second chances. But to your point, Bo, it makes me angry that even if it is 5 or 10 or 20 years ago, you never get a clean slate. It's just terrible. You just never get one, no matter what you do. And that's why they're scared.
We recently have employed a new headmistress from up north to a local school here, and she had incredible record for turning around problem schools in very poor areas and really increasing the exam pass rate. Incredible. And we were like, and then somebody started digging about why she actually left the school up north, and it turns out she'd written something on Twitter about 15 years ago.
Right.
And so the reason she was at our school is because she changed her name and moved 200 miles down to us. And then someone locally found out about her old tweets, and she got sacked again from our school. We had to pay her hundreds of thousands of pounds for breach of contract.
Wow.
So, but it could have been used as an example, I said.
Of course.
Why don't we say the headmistress the new one could have said, this is the mistake I made. This is how much social media follows you. Don't copy me.
Yes.
This is how important it is for you children to understand how important it is to be careful what you say on social media. And equally, the community should have forgiven.
Correct.
And we've lost that. We don't confess. We don't admit we're wrong. And nobody forgives
because
anymore.
The punishment is forever. So why would you? Why would you admit? Why would you ever? The punishment's forever.
The loss of Christian values, I think, in the West has been so detrimental to everything.
We're supposed to be forgiving Christians, aren't we? We're supposed to be. Yes.
Yeah.
Let me grab another comment if I could. The Great Babe, how are you, sir? Says, become ungovernable and you can't be canceled. Learn how to be self-sufficient as you can, even when you're the only ones that are coming to help. Well, I think that's true. However, there's a big however to that. The concept is true. It's just so this goes back to what you were saying, Holden. It's simple, but that's just not easy, right? Should you do it? I think we all should. We should all become as self-sufficient as we can. That's true, but it's not easy, particularly if you're trying to make something happen in your life. If you have other people who you're responsible for, it becomes a whole lot harder to do that, even though I think it's true. It's just really challenging.
And back to what I said before, 60% of us couldn't put our hands on $1,000 in an emergency. Like, how are we supposed to become, again, like you said, it's simple, but not easy. Most of us, if we have one accident, one trip to the hospital, then like your whole plan is gone, Right. And I think that's where, people are losing trust. People are going down these weird paths of like canceling and platforming because we don't have control over, it doesn't feel like we have control over our own lives, let alone society as a whole. It feels like, our own lives could just be upended with one little accident, something goes wrong. And that's, people can't live in that state without going down a path of fear or something like that, and once you, it's like in Star Wars, fear leads to hate leads to anger, that kind of thing. And I think that's what you're seeing today. There's a lot of anger.
For the sci-fi Holden.
Yeah, of course. You're seeing that play out today completely. Like, people are really scared. There's a lot to be scared of in the world, and it's, you know, turning to anger because that's the easiest way. Like, it's not easy for any individual to push back against this, or even in your own life to try and become ungovernable. But there was one point you made that I wanted to touch on too as well, about technology. You know, I think being able to see, you know, someone's tweets from 5, 10, 15 years ago. Like, I'm 22, and I think, you know, I've grown up with the internet, with social media my whole life. Sure. And I think there, like, liberty is not, there's some disconnect there, you know, where like, there's always this sense of like, oh, when I was 8 years old, I was thinking like, you know, anything you do online will be seen by your future employers, by your future school. Like, I think there's, you know, liberty and technology have not worked themselves out yet. You know?
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
We're still figuring that one out.
Yeah.
Yes, we are figuring that one out 100%. Well, Gabe brings up a valid point. Gabe says, forgiveness, sure. But how do we know that the sin won't come back and endanger you, the other employees, or the clients? It is a valid question, Gabe. And I think that as a general rule, there's difference between, people say forgive and forget. I don't say forget. I just say forgive. Don't forget, right? Forgetting is the dumb part. Still remember what the person did, but forgive them and give them a second chance. And you give a person opportunities. And are they going to screw you sometimes? Yes. But people who've never made a mistake still screw you. Like, people screw you over. It happens, right? It just happens. It happens all the time. If you're going to engage with people, sometimes they're going to backstab you. It happens, right? You hope that you can find an advance. You hope you can be savvy enough to defend yourself. You hope you just give them a little bit at a time so they don't do too much to you. You hope you build up good relationships. But my argument to this, Gabe, and again, it's a valid point, but my argument would be, if you give someone a second chance and they don't screw you, they are super loyal, because most people won't give them a second chance. That person might screw you over. It's possible, right? But if they don't, they're very loyal. You're the one who gave them a second chance when nobody else did. I remember again with my mother. My mother, many times people did not give her a second chance. They held her conviction against her until the day she died. But sometimes the people who she worked for, she was super loyal, because she was like, this person trusted me. This person gave me an opportunity. She was super loyal to those employers. They were very happy to have her. So I think it's both. Guys, am I wrong here? Jamie, you've been quiet. Tell me.
I think there's a couple. So this is like one of those topics where there's kind of a gray area, I think. So if you're running for public office, I think whatever person is appointing you to be the candidate should be also responsible for running a background check on you. If you're going to be sitting in a position of power as such, then your background should be thoroughly researched before you become a candidate. But if we're talking about someone having a job and now all of a sudden we're digging up something from 20 years ago, that's insane. Like, what is going on in your own life that this is the thing that you have the time to do? And if the best thing that you can do with your time is to go out of your way to hurt someone and possibly their family, maybe you need to stop and look at your own actions and think about what you could bring that's actually positive to the table.
Well, let me touch two parts of that, right? If someone's going to run for office, and Jamie, you know that you've done it yourself, we are stepping into the public space. In that case, we're accepting there's going to be a microscope put on us, and sometimes in us, and there's going to be a microscope all over the place. I get it. Like, I walked into this world. I'm not shocked if someone goes, Larry, years ago you did X, Y, and Z. Yeah, that's true. In fact, when I ran for
if you ask me, I'll tell you all about it.
Yes. I remember somebody once said, they said, Larry, I can't wait until you're elected, and then there's some kind of scandal, like you and like, you know, 3 hookers, he says. And I said, if I have 3 hookers, that's not a scandal. That's just news. That's not scandal. It's just news. I was going to have 4, but she was busy. Sorry. That'd be it. I don't care. Like, I wouldn't even care. I would just do what I would do. I would be me no matter what, right? I mean, that's not my thing, but if it was, no judgment. If you like to hang out with sex workers, no worries. I have no judgment. I'm libertarian. You do you. But I'm just saying, I would just say it. But to your point, if you're just being a regular citizen, a regular human being, a regular person trying to live your life, why are we putting microscopes on you? It doesn't make any sense. You're not saying, I want to be the candidate. I want to represent all of you. You're just going, I would like to pay my bills this month. That's all you're saying. I want to pay my bills this month. Can I just do that? And I feel like we shouldn't be so cruel at all in that regard. I guess I'm agreeing, which is what I'm saying, right? If you're asking to be more, I think it's true. But I want to go one step further if I could. You guys remember there was a story of a woman who I think she was working for Teen Vogue, if I remember the stories, Teen Vogue. And she had a problem, like she made some bad tweaks when she was in high school that I think she was making jokes about Asian people or something like that, if I remember right. And then, you remember the story, Bo? And then later on, she then got caught when she was at another job. She admitted it. She showed him, said, I was in high school. I'm sorry. It was stupid. It was a joke. I was trying to be funny. I was so wrong. I'm sorry. Done. And they said the thing, got it over, done. Now she had a second job. And workers went and dug up her stuff. To your point, Jamie, people who should have been working at Teen Vogue weren't working. They were online trying to find something about this woman, found out what she did, and they brought it back up, and they fired the woman. Now, if it was me and I'm the boss, I'm firing my employees.
Yes.
Every one of them that came to me, you're all fired.
Yeah.
Because you're shitty people, you're bad people, you're gone. And I'm promoting her.
Yeah, like I want to see you work that hard on finding a story.
Right.
Yes. Work that out on a story they put in my magazine, not on getting somebody fired. It's crazy. Bo, you remember that story?
Yeah, I do vaguely remember it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I even heard about it in the UK.
There we go. Exactly. We heard about it even back then.
The world is now.
Absolutely.
I think it's the easier path, right? Like the harder path is to look for the truth, to, do good journalism, do your job well, and just excel. And you be like, people are going to see the good work I'm doing and they'll reward me for it. It's a lot easier to just point out, someone else.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I apologize. I couldn't hear you.
No, I was just going to say it's so much easier to go down like, oh, this person, did this bad thing. And if, I'll prove how good of a person I am to everyone else by showing them like, look, you screwed up here by hiring this person. And now like you virtue signaled to everybody. Everybody's like, it's the easier path.
Let me do a little bit more admin if good. Guys, if you're my audience and you're watching or listening, if you're listening to the podcast or watching this, wherever you are, click that like button. It does matter. Every like does count. We want to make sure this moves past Mr. Al Gore, algorithm. We have to get past algorithm. It's important. Let's do that. Also, if you're watching on Twitter, please retweet it right now. Just retweet it. It does matter. If you want to get your chats to the front, you can. You can super chat if you happen to be watching on Larry Sharpe YouTube. If you want to support the show directly, you can. Patreon.com/Sharpeway. Throw me $10 a month. I'll spend more time doing this and less time doing the other work that I do, trying to get people fired. I'm kidding. I'm not doing that at all. Absolutely not. Please follow the three people here who have given us so much time. They're giving us some love. Give them some love. Please follow Bo at King Bob IIV. Follow Holden at holdenfwdusa USA, and Jamie at Silvestri AF, all on Twitter. Or check out what they're doing. If you head over to either YouTube or Facebook, you can see I've given you all the goodies, what they're doing. Check them out to the best of your ability. So I do want to go back to the part that I brought before, and that is the middle class being wrecked. The opening idea of this conversation, which I'm glad we went other places, it's been a great conversation, but our opening idea was the idea of who should the middle class and the working class trust? And why I put middle class and working class is I feel like they're becoming the same, right? It's tough to find a middle class, tougher to find a middle class in America. It's tougher and tougher to find that. More and more people are just becoming working class or working poor even. I mean, in theory, even working poor, right? But definitely working class. It's harder and harder to find middle class people in America. They're either getting up there where they're making 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures a year, right? Or they're barely scrapping by. In New York City, I mean, you're barely surviving at $100,000 a year in New York City, right? Other parts of the country, you can make it very well on that. But in New York City, you can't. Other parts of the country, people are making $20,000 a year, $25,000 a year, and it's a family. How do you survive in America, $25,000 a year, and you got a family? I don't know how you do it, right? You're struggling the whole way through. So we spend our time listening to talking heads, feeling good about ourselves, and trusting that things are going to get better, right? We trust the economy is going to get better. We trust there won't be a war. We trust that things that my kid will go to college and get a college degree and they'll get a good job and they won't be in too much debt. But I feel like at one point, when people stop trusting, that they become black-pilled, they become nihilist, they become totally checked out. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people are hurting, why so many people are, have mental illness, have addiction problems, insert thing here. I feel like they're just giving up because I trusted the system and the system didn't do what it was supposed to do. Am I off on this?
No, you're not. I also think a big part of the problem is that when you look at the wordplay that's being used against the public, especially the working and middle class, that the wording is usually something along the lines of, I just had a brilliant thought and totally lost the train of thought because I was going to go backwards 2 steps. Hold on, I have this. No, I was going to say the working class is basically being put into a situation where, like, when you look at UPS, right? They became a community and they formed together and they stood up against everything going wrong. And when we look at the working class, or when we look at the words that media is using, we're putting everyone into their own separate communities, but it's not actually about being an active part of where you're living and where you're inhabiting.
Oh, yes.
In terms of the cancellation and all of that, and touching on the Christian point of before, one of the values of being in a Christian society, let's say, is that if you have committed a sin, you're supposed to be able to talk to your brothers or your sisters and be held accountable, and then gain forgiveness and also forgive yourself and then move on to the next thing. But because all of this has been destroyed by these talking heads and the screens and the TVs and the phones and all of that, people are losing that sense of community and they're getting into this virtual community that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
We could be kids and your whole community's gone now. Who do you have? Your next door neighbor who you're going to hope doesn't come pillage your cabinets because you've never said hi to them and now they need food.
Yes. Oh my God, Jamie, that's brilliant. I happen to, and maybe it's because of what I did, I happen to know my neighbors, right? But I'm the oddball, right? I know my neighbors who don't know each other. I live in a city of 8 million people. I live in the largest city in the United States of America. And we have some parts of my city, there are 40 to 50,000 people in 1 square mile. That is how dense some parts of this city are in population. And we don't know our neighbors. You're exactly correct. We don't know. I know because I ran for office, I was knocking on doors. So maybe that's why I know them, but I still know them. Like I still know my name. Like I know the guy who owns the deli. Like I know him. I see him in the street. We say hi. Like I know the people around my neighborhood. But I am the oddball. A lot of people don't know people around them. And they feel more connected to some online community than they do someplace else. It's one of the reasons why, and Jamie, because Jamie, you and I have met in person. You know that I go to all of these conventions. I go to meet people all the time. So now I have a reason to go to UK and go meet Bo. See, so now I know how to go. So I go out and meet people all the time. Half the people who are on my show I've met in person, right? Because I go out and I meet them. And I'm out every weekend. I'm up in upstate New York, or I'm out. I was in Freedom Fest. I was out in Memphis. I'm going to DC next weekend. I'm out all the time meeting people. But you're right. I am the oddball. I'm sorry, I yapped away, but I love what you said. It's exactly correct.
Yeah.
So, Bo, is the same in the UK or no? Is this a similar problem, or is this more an American thing?
And it was a really good point, actually, Jamie. And I wonder if that's why people have been so quick to turn to social media, because we don't have our communities anymore. We used to have strong, close-knit communities, and now with migration and everything else, massively overpopulated, we don't have that sense of community.
Yes.
Is that why we've been so captivated by social media? We're finding groups that share the same values as us. That's a really good point, Jamie. But
I think
absolutely
exactly the same in the UK.
I think that ever since screens have really come into it, like I was born in 1990. So I remember growing up until like the age of 5 or 6 or whatever, where there was no computer in the house. There wasn't like a cell phone, but literally watch the evolution. And now we have Holden here who's like, no, I lived with it. And
Yeah.
I still remember, and sometimes people will say to me, they're like, oh, I remember when I was young, I used to go outside and play, but you wouldn't know anything about that. And I'm like, no, I would. It was like a pre-1994 or pre-1995 thing, I guess.
Right.
But
No, I mean,
sorry.
I'll just say quickly, I had that experience once, after when my parents got divorced around 8, my dad moved into this new place where, there was like a community. There were other kids my age in the houses next door. And that was like an awesome time, and I never had that again. Like that doesn't exist anymore. But I look back on that as like, that was fantastic. That was like, that's what kids are supposed to be doing. And then in a broader sense, like that community is what keeps people together. I mean, I think that's if you want to point to kind of one solution to these problems we've been talking about, like community, getting involved in your community, right?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. It's one of the best things that we could possibly do. And the problem is, and this is the libertarian in me, I don't care, wear it on my sleeve. The more you add government, the more you remove community. It is natural. The more you add government, the more you remove community.
I agree with that.
I think it's deliberate. I mean, all of the biggest revolutions in history have happened in the local pub or down the wash house and down where the men drink and talk and meet and congregate. I think it's been very deliberate, without getting conspiratorial, to have us looking at cats on our phone, and we're not communicating with our children. We're letting media do it for us. So even our own internal house community is breaking down. Marriages are breaking down at exponential rates. So, a mum might be busy looking at her phone.
I am with you, and I'm going to go one step further. Most of the biggest real revolutions were always with a strong middle class. The French Revolution was a middle class. The American Revolution was a middle class. Even getting rid of apartheid in South Africa was the black middle class. Right. In every case, it was a middle class that were the leaders that got everything because they had enough to lose. Right. They were building and they were like, no, my life has to be better for me and my kids. I'm middle class. I'm prepared to lead this revolution. The middle class, a strong middle class creates revolution. And when you destroy a middle class, people become serfs. They become peasants, and peasants don't revolt. Serfs don't revolt. Not individually they do, but they don't revolt as a unit. They don't revolt as a nation. The middle class is the one that actually revolts as a nation. It's absolutely true. I don't think it's conspiratorial at all, Bo. I think it's actually being done on purpose. And I'll go back in America, right? Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Gabe brought it up. The Marine Corps was born in a tavern. To bring up your point, Bo, that is true. It was actually November 10th, 1775 in Tun Tavern in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I do know that. And the guy's name was, if I remember right, it was Captain Samuels, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the actual name of the captain who did it to start the Marine Corps. Sorry, I'm a Marine. I know my Marine Corps history. I just do. Sorry. So yes. Any case, I think it's absolutely true, Bo. I think destruction of the middle class is happening on purpose. I don't know if it's a global thing at all. I don't know if that, but it's definitely an American thing. That's for sure.
We have a different class structure in the UK. So we call the working class, your tradesmen, your plumbers, your road builders. That's working class. And then middle class is like your academics. So they might still be not very wealthy, but they're classed as middle class. It's not. Class in the UK isn't necessarily to do with how much money you earn. You could have someone like Lord Sugar, who was our equivalent of Trump, and he's proper working class. He's a Cockney boy. He did The Apprentice in the UK, but he's a millionaire, but he's working class. So our class system is totally different to yours. So that's why I'm getting confused.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's easy for people to get conspiratorial about stuff like that, about a lot of these things, frankly. But, why aren't we promoting more trade jobs? Like, if we're looking at automation, 100%. Everything that's coming down the line, like those are good jobs. Those are going to pay well. You're going to be able to support a family on that. And those are not being promoted at all. Like I know in some countries like Germany, for example, really promotes those. They have a really good system that, But we, in America at least, I don't know about the UK, what it looks like, but in America, like that's not promoted at all. There's like,
no,
it's like you're the weird kid if you go there.
Here's the problem, Holden. If you actually go off and try to become a plumber or some kind of tradesman, you'll actually make money and not be in debt.
Yeah.
That's a problem in America.
100%.
That's a problem.
We want you in debt.
Stupid. So
Yeah.
they put them down. Working class people are stupid. Oh, you're just a builder. You're just a carpenter. Well, who kept the country running when we were in lockdown for 2 years?
Yes.
Because it wasn't the professors that were hate-speaking about the working class from their back bedroom, was it?
Right.
It was the people working the farms and the factories and the cleaners.
Yeah.
And delivering food. The working class is all that mattered when the country was in crisis.
Well, let me go one step further with this, right? The working class, if back when I was a kid, if you were a reporter or you were a news person, that was a working class job.
Yeah,
you got that because you hustled.
So was teaching.
Yes, and that's coming back. The citizen journalist is a working class job.
That's right.
You're busting your butt to get the information, to get the stuff. You're doing that. You're not Harvard trained, right? And I'll give you a personal issue because you look at MSNBC as an example. MSNBC has a lot of people of color on it. Those people are supposed to be the people who represent me. They are. But all of them are like Harvard, Yale people who don't know anything that I've been through. They have no idea. I grew up in the South Bronx. None of these guys did that, right? My parents didn't graduate college. Mom didn't graduate high school. All their parents are like got PhDs, right? Yeah. And they all have master's degrees from Harvard and Yale and Stanford. And they don't represent me at all, but they're supposed to, right? They sit there and tell me how much they represent me, but they don't. They don't understand anything I've been through. It is an embarrassment in how that works. But that used to be, the media used to be a working class job. So the person who was telling me the news was someone who understood what was going on and how it affected people. Now it's, to your point, Bo, it's really some professor who can read from a teleprompter, who can say their opinion on an issue. That's what it is. It's completely true. And WJA Dragon says, used to have 55 companies giving us our news, and they ought to tell both sides of the story. Then Reagan and Clinton. So now we have 7 companies owning 90%. They cross-invest and donate to both parties.
That's so true.
Well, aside from that, it's also the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like that was not a thing. Yeah, like I mean, I remember like 95 watching Clinton on TV late at night. But, even when I was a kid, I think it was like 1 or 2 a.m., some of the channels would still cut it and there would be nothing on for a few hours. And now that's totally gone as well. Yep. It's just, even if they're telling you the same thing, it's got to be there. It's got to be there.
Yes.
It's so crazy.
And I mean, that sounds amazing. Like, how great would it be for the country's mental health if like we shut off at night?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes. If you watch an old movie, like from the 70s, maybe, if you watch a movie from the 70s and you watch a guy who falls asleep in front of the TV, what'll happen around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, they'll show the American flag and they will, the American, the national anthem plays. Mm-hmm. And then once the national anthem's over, static. That is how TV stations used to go off the air. They would go off the air around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They go off the air. They show the American flag, do the anthem, static until the morning. And the morning had 1 or 2 things: children's shows and or news. That was the morning show. You showed up and the kids would go up for school, or the other channel would have news of the morning, and that was it. Not anymore. Those days are way over. So I want to ask, before we wrap this up, Holden, is there something you want to bring up? Something we talk about, something we missed? Bo, anything we missed? Jim, anything we missed? Did we miss anything or something we should be talking about before we wrap this up?
Well, I'll plug the Forward Party because
please go ahead.
We talked about like local, building up community, like local politics. That is where the Forward Party's focus is on. Like, we're not thinking about national politics at all. We're not running a candidate for president, just focused on, local candidates, building, those local communities up again. And I think I would really, really like to see more people focused on that. People who, if you're someone who wants to get involved, like, forget national politics. You don't have to jump into that. It's nasty. You're probably not going to impact anything. But if you get into local politics, you can have a real impact. You can actually change, your life and people's lives around you if that's something you want to go into. I think, if people focus more and more on that, that's the way things change.
And I am happy to say I was the only libertarian that the Forward Party endorsed last year. Yes.
We've actually,
So yes.
We've just had a similar party set up in the UK. We've got lots of small independent candidates, but there's a new group that's set up by a gentleman called Peter Dawes called the 650. If anybody's in the UK, have a look at it. And they've turned exactly that. It's about being a good candidate MP in your local community. And there's no manifesto, which is what I like. So the manifesto comes from the people.
Right.
So the candidates stand in, 650 is the amount of candidates available in the country. And they don't stand on a manifesto. They say, you tell me what your problem is, and you pay me, so I take it to Parliament, and I will fight for you, whether I agree with it or not. So it's kind of like turning politics on its head.
Interesting idea, sure.
In the UK that's interested in running locally, go on to the 650.com and sign yourself up. You don't need.
You said, is it the numbers 650 or is it spelled out?
No, it's the numbers. The 650.
The numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or
and
contact me and I'll send you that way.
I just want to say Forward Party is the exact same thing. We just have several principles at the national level, but there's no like policy platform on, all these hot button issues. It's just, you tell us what you need. We want to serve the community. Yeah. I like to hear that. I'm going to look them up too.
There we go.
Good luck, Holden.
Good luck to you
Jamie,
too.
Anything?
Yes, I would just like to remind everyone they can check out the docu-series called The Untold Truth about human trafficking in the Super Bowl at thepatriotchicks.com. And over the past few months, I've been helping out a lot with Go USA. And I think that it would be interesting if everyone checked out the Op Score. It's the JD Power of politics, and it's helped bringing back a voice to the forgotten 80%. So if people would like to go to go-usa.us. It's a great nonprofit that's actually bipartisan, looking to restore the voice, again, to the forgotten 80%. So it'd be great for everyone to check that out.
There we go. Everybody who's been watching, I want to say thank you so much for watching. I'll be on again tomorrow at 1:05, my radio show, the Sharpe Radio out of Rochester, New York, WYSL. If you have the time, please check it out at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can check that one out, Bo. It's not too late for you. So yes, you can watch that if you want to. I will also be on, you went back to bed, yes. I'll be also on the Vanguard podcast at 3 p.m. and Dylan Burns Live at 7 p.m. all tomorrow. Very busy day, 3 times tomorrow. I hope to see all of you very soon.